Okay, everybody, let's begin. Good afternoon. Welcome to today's webinar hosted by Alsbridge. Before we continue, just a few housekeeping items. First off, everyone will be on mute during the presentation. However, we'd like to encourage your active participation and feedback through the discussion. So please submit your questions and comments in writing during the session by entering them in the question window on the toolbar. Also, the session is being recorded and will be available to you guys within the next 48 hours or so on sourcingleadership.com. Our discussion today will be led by Alsbridge Managing Director Chris Pattacini and Alsbridge Director David Pereira. I'll give you a little bit of background on them. Chris Pattacini has over 20 years of experience in IT outsourcing and benchmarking. As a Managing Director at Alsbridge, Chris utilizes state-of-the-art benchmarking tools for project-based support of outsourcing transactions for Global 2000 companies. Previously, Chris was Partner and Vice President at Nautilus Advisors, which developed ProBenchmark, a SaaS benchmarking product acquired by Alsbridge in 2008. Chris earned his MBA from Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute and his bachelor's degree in mathematics from the University of Connecticut. David Pereira brings more than 18 years of global outsourcing, financial modeling, and contract management knowledge to the table. He's advised clients throughout America, Europe, Japan, Hong Kong, and Australia, and his primary areas of expertise include high-value pricing analysis, negotiation support, and SLA development. David earned his bachelor's degree in business administration from Seattle University. And with that, we'll turn it over to Chris.
Great. Thank you, Brady, and good afternoon, everyone. We're going to talk a little bit about market trends that we're seeing, and specifically as it relates to autonomics, as we've seen in the IT marketplace, how that's been evolving. We'll also, in addition to that, talk about general price trends and review various trends that we're seeing on a tower-by-tower basis, both inside IT and then also with some BPO services. As Brady indicated, please feel free to ask questions through the question toolbar, and we'll certainly try to answer those questions as we go through the presentation today. If we do miss your question, know that that's something we can certainly follow up with following the session as well. So just to give you a little background about Alsbridge's benchmarking capability, we provide benchmarking capability around 5 different domains that you see there in green: IT infrastructure and application services, telecom, hardware, software, and shared and business and shared services. And you can see the various towers within each of those categories. We do our benchmarking primarily in the markets that are served by benchmarking, which is North America, Europe, and portions of Asia. But we also have data throughout the globe in terms of being able to support those companies with outsourcing needs. As Brady indicated, we have developed really changed ProBenchmark and changed the benchmarking industry by really focusing on automation to allow folks to get real-time access to market pricing intelligence. So no longer do we select peers when we do a benchmark, but rather we have a tool that uses all of the data that we have and is calibrated using analytics and regression analysis to produce up-to-the-minute real-time market price intelligence. And it's delivered as a software-as-a-service tool. It allows you to almost instantaneously run a report to identify a market price for a particular service configuration. So it's a really powerful tool in the marketplace. And we've been doing benchmarking in this form going on 8 years now. So we have a vast array of data and then also historical price trends, which allow us to be able to produce the results that we're producing here. So as we're going to talk through this presentation today, we're going to talk about autonomics, and I'm going to turn it over to David for an introduction and to talk through some autonomics here. David.
Hi, Chris. Thanks. I'm David Pereira, and I manage the development of the ProBenchmark tool for Alsbridge and do a lot of the data analytics. And we've been seeing some aggressive pricing trends lately due to autonomics being implemented in the market. And so as we look at the IT market evolution, we can see that it's mirroring what's been happening in manufacturing for quite some time. And so when we talk about autonomics, we're looking at software that has artificial intelligence and can actually replace the existing effort for IT services. And for example, in this slide, when the car was first developed, there was a lot of human labor involved. And now on the production line, you don't see as many people performing functions. So we're seeing that similar trend in IT as this new technology takes hold in the market. Additionally, through the use of automation and tools, the delivery of the product becomes better over time. So we're seeing that the SLAs and response times are much improved with the implementation of autonomics. Next slide. So this slide covers in a bit of detail the pathway to autonomics that we've seen. Initially, in early outsourcing deals, things were standardized through automated scripts. It was required human intervention, but we learned to have the same script being used by the service desk for people to resolve issues, and so that was fairly early on. Over time, that became more automated, and so there's where we were a few years ago is scripts and executing analysis and thresholds on your servers to automatically reboot and do activities like that. And this next generation with autonomics is taking your existing infrastructure that's in place and replacing much of that human decision making that goes into performing the IT services with the software. And so the challenge we're seeing is that firms, need to have their processes well defined ahead of time to implement the autonomics software. And so the software can then learn through listening or analyzing data that's provided and perform the functions and change based on the conditions. What we're seeing is a significant cost takeout of 15 to 30% from a legacy, with the processes not as well defined, so it takes some time to implement. And then if in a highly automated or scripted environment, they're then able to take out 40 to 75% of the costs by implementing the labor costs by implementing autonomics.
Thanks, David. So just to talk a little bit about some of the benefits and go back to the example that David talked about in rebooting a server. Today we do have scripts and automation and dashboards that allow organizations to reboot a server remotely and to leverage analytics to understand when a server needs to be rebooted. But oftentimes that requires somebody looking at a console, responding to an alert, and the whole idea of this autonomic automation is to really get to the point where it's a fully integrated service delivery model, that a service desk call comes into the service desk that identifies that a particular application is not performing properly. The autonomic solution would actually go out and ping the server to see if the server's up. If the server's not up, do a reboot of that server or do further diagnostics, and really automatically in real time bring that server back online. So it's actually pretty powerful capability, not only to be able to solve problems quickly and with less labor, but also to be able to learn in the future and look at patterns and understand where there are issues in the environment, to be able to, in some cases, even predict when a server might actually be about to fail and proactively do something rather than have it be a reactive response. So the benefits are certainly many, both for enterprises and service providers, and they really span two broad categories. Certainly delivery cost improvements, as you take labor out of a solution and automate that solution. It converts sort of operational costs into one-time capital costs. And then the other part, you have the ability to improve service, as we mentioned earlier. So the key factor there is that the system can respond much more consistently and rapidly than traditional engineers or operators. So I know that we've got some questions coming in here, and as we go, we'll certainly try to answer those. Some of these here look like they're going to be covered a little bit earlier, so if we don't answer your question, certainly post it again if we don't get to it. Some of the risks, obviously, I think the most critical one is organizations being ready for this change, and in fact, this is going to be a global change that we'll need to look at, both in terms of what it means operationally, but then also what it's going to mean culturally and organizationally. And one of the things that I think we'll need to look at is, to David's point, going back to the manufacturing model and what happened when things became automated in manufacturing. And that same cycle is going to occur within IT and IT service delivery, and as well as business process outsourcing and the like. So we're going to really need to reinvent what people do and how they interact with systems going forward. So there's going to be certainly a lot of resistance to this kind of change, and we'll certainly need to work through that. Just like any new technology or capability, there's going to take some time to have some adoption of that. And certainly we're going to need some proof of concepts, and also so we're seeing today in the market providers that are doing what we would call pilot programs with their customers. So what will end up happening, we expect, we've seen some deals already signed that include Autonomics in them. We expect over the next 6 to 12 months to start to see the output or the fruits of those transactions, and providers then coming out and showcasing the success where there is success, or retooling to then improve that capability, and then roll out greater capabilities in the future. So move to the next slide here. Really gets at what the impact would look like across the IT service spectrum. So on the left-hand side, you have level 1, level 2, and level 3 support. And you can see that after automation, there's a overall reduction across all 3 areas. So really what you're trying to do is eliminate the labor associated with any particular service delivery, from the help desk at the front end where someone is talking on the phone to the back end solution and resolving the issue. And the key there is for the Autonomic solution to actually be able to learn as incidents occur. What happens over time, and you'll see on the right-hand side, is sort of there might be a little bit of an investment, although we're seeing providers in some cases eat that investment because they've made the investment in the capability and they're not charging clients anymore in the beginning of a transaction. But certainly we anticipate that there is some initial upfront cost associated with that, and then the benefits are reaped in the out months after the tool has had an opportunity to learn. So what will typically happen is the cost takeout won't occur initially, but as the systems learn how to manage the environment through a feedback loop, there will need to be someone monitoring the tools and the capabilities so that when it encounters a solution that's not solvable, that a human can intervene, solve that issue, document it so that the tool then knows what the solution is, and then can use that solution the next time that issue occurs. So what you end up having is a tool and capability that learns over time and continues to take more and more work out as it learns more about the environment and how to solve and resolve problems. And obviously this all requires some upfront investment. And again, whether providers are including that in their price or not, when David's going to talk a little bit about the pricing that we're actually seeing in the marketplace as a result of this. But there are clearly investments that need to be made both by the client and the provider. And so that's something that companies are going to need to look at. But certainly the benefit in automation is very powerful.
Right. Also,
I'll turn it over to David to talk a little bit about what we're actually seeing in the market.
Right. I'd also like to add, even though there are significant labor reductions, one of the benefits to Autonomics is having the people in your organization are then able to focus on higher value work and working with the customers and resolving more complex issues as time goes by. And so, there's still a need for human. It's not going to totally reduce human activity to zero, but there's a considerable amount of human effort still involved in the relationships with your clients. And so, so what we did here, this chart summarizes an analysis of the deals that we've gotten in that had aggressive price reductions due to Autonomics. As we dug under the covers into the deals, it's a new thing in the market, so we're not seeing a consistent way that it's described in a deal, or whether it's identified or not, and the measures of it are still evolving at this time. And so when you look at the chart here, we think of things by service tower. And so the 3 areas where we found a consistent trend were with server, service desk, and the storage and backup services. And so this shows a price range reduction that we would see in a typical outsourcing deal. You're going to see some price reduction over time in the unit pricing, and then this represents an increased price reduction in the out years for services. So this really summarizes the next few slides that we're going to go into detail more on what the rates look like over time. The percentages are year-over-year decreases. So, for example, for service desk, where you see the 8 to 13%, that's in addition to the 15 to 25% in the year 2 price reduction, and so that it's cumulative over the 5 years, and there's a few notes here. Our services, when you look at labor costs earlier, I was talking about potentially 40 to 70% reduction in labor costs. When you're looking at an IT service, the service is not 100% labor, so that's reflected. Our numbers represent a bundling of service, which includes labor and non-labor, and so that's why you're not seeing as large of a reduction since it's not 100% labor. And so there's some notes on server that the deals we looked at, they had a mix of tools and facilities in addition to services. Price decreases, what we noticed in service desk, are based on volume reductions more so than a unit price reduction. Although we did see some deals that had the price reduction in the unit prices, and we'll talk a little more in detail when we get to service desk about those findings. And then with storage and backup, there's a significant amount of hardware in the deals we're looking at, and so it's a much lower labor percentage when compared to the other 2 towers in comparison. So if we could go to the next slide.
Sure, and David, before we go there, we had a couple of questions that came in. Just wanted to kind of cover those since it's timely here. One of the questions is related to kind of what's happening in the market today, and really what we're seeing and where this data comes from are what we believe are pilot projects that providers have agreed, have brought in Autonomics on a particular account to win the business. And as David's going to show, the price benefit or savings is fairly significant and compelling for clients to look at. And so we've seen, it's certainly not all of the deals that we're seeing today. In fact, it's I would say less than 10%, probably maybe around 5% of the deals. We're seeing some form of automation or autonomic solution included, at least stated that it's included. Obviously, we don't necessarily know that autonomics are being used all the time, but we know at least in about 5% of the deals we're seeing, autonomics is explicitly identified as a solution, and that is driving the pricing that you're seeing here from a reduction standpoint. The other question we'll talk a little bit about is does this extend to other services like back office operational areas, BPO? We expect it to. We know that providers are talking about it. I'm not aware within Alsbridge that we've seen yet a solution, a provider bringing a solution, but certainly that is something that is something that we're expecting to see, because clearly those back office operations, certainly finance and accounting, other kinds of back office support functions are ripe with opportunities for further automation and autonomics. So we expect that to happen as well. So here you go, David.
All right, thank you, Chris. This gives more detail around the server analysis that we did, and so we evaluated the pricing on an annual basis. So this is annual revenue. We normalized everything to year one on a scale. To read this chart is this is like an index. So 100, we're using percentages. So 100 is year one, and then as the price changes, it's just like a percentage difference that gets applied to generate the display here. And so the blue line represents what the price would be without RPA, and then the orange line is with RPA. And RPA is another acronym, robotic process automation, that we use to talk about autonomics. So we use that term interchangeably with autonomics, and so the chart above shows graphically what that would look like over time from your base of 100, and then the below are the percentage differences. So you can see that in the early years, most of the reduction being projected in the pricing is in the early years, and then it tends to align closer in year 4 and 5. There's not as much of a year-to-year decrease difference from without RPA versus with RPA. And so the analysis also excluded any one-time or transitional fees that occurred. So as we spoke earlier, there may be one-time fees up front. Some vendors are charging for that, while we've seen other vendors not having any upfront fee for the additional effort to implement the autonomics activities. And so the unit price decreases seem to flatten out over time in the server tower, and this is based on a limited amount of data. So it's fairly new in the market, but we felt this is a very powerful trend, and we are updating our model, the online pro benchmark tool, to reflect these changes for the server tower, the service desk tower, and the storage and backup towers. And so we really expect this to be much more prevalent in the upcoming year, and our tools adding the capability to predict what those price differences would be from the traditional outsourcing transition and transformation that's been occurring. So with that, we'll go to the service desk. And so you can see how this trend line looks quite a bit different than server. And so the service desk price reductions are fairly flat over time, with the labor-based model and based on transaction value or transaction volume, and the amount of time it takes to resolve problems, level 1 and level 2. that come into the service desk. And so this is where there's a great amount of leverage available from Autonomics. And what we've seen is that it's mostly volumes that get decreased on the service desk. So the pricing, the unit pricing remains pretty flat, but you see that the volume decreases, and so that's reducing the annual spend when you're looking at this analysis, and the majority of that takes place by the third year, and then it again becomes much flatter in the out years, in year 4 and 5, with a 4% and a 2% reduction year over year versus just a 1% for the traditional outsourcing without the RPA. So this is a very significant impact for service desk.
Yeah, you know, David, it's interesting that as you described, we expect that the number of sort of manually supported calls will get reduced because the automation will pick it up. It'll be interesting to see how the pricing of this service changes over time. And one of the conjectures that we've had, and certainly some providers have talked to us about, is the move away from a per call price, but rather back to what we had maybe 10 years ago, which was a per user supported price, thereby allowing the reduction, that there'd be less risk with the reduction in calls or how to count calls, because the question about what's a call now, if somebody calls into the desk and it's handled by the automation, is that a call or not? And so I think one of the things we're probably going to see in the coming years as these solutions roll out is a move back to per user supported pricing rather than what's traditionally seen in the market today, which is a per call price.
Yeah, good point, Chris. We had a question come in about how many deals have been included to achieve these results. And so the answer to that is we're seeing it's a pretty limited number of deals that in this analysis, and it's much less than 5%, or not much less. It's about 5 to 10% of the deal flow that we're looking at when we did this analysis. When we looked through all our deals and found the deals where Autonomics was decreasing the price very significantly over the traditional outsourcing model.
Yeah, you can imagine that in the market today, as we talked about this whole notion of, providers doing pilot projects, that they would typically take on a handful of those projects. So it's not every deal that they're solutioning. They would do it, and it's not every provider yet. So a handful of providers doing a handful of pilot projects, if you will, and we're seeing that order of magnitude in the market. So the data is admittedly limited. However, it is not just compelling, but also fairly consistent in terms of when we look across deals at the different services, we do see similarities in the solutions, which is why we're at least here showing you what we're seeing as it opens up in the marketplace to give folks a sense of where the market is heading. So that's a good question. To the storage tower, David.
Thanks, Chris. So when you look at storage, the pricing has been decreasing aggressively with storage including the hardware. So there's a mix. One thing to keep in mind when looking at this chart is there's a mix in the price reductions shown here of hardware. Hardware has been dropping just rapidly. It just continues to decline for storage. The hardware and the tools to support your storage environment. And so that you can see the blue line is much steeper here, and the orange line with RPA, there's a smaller gap here, and that's due to two things. One is the hardware being included, and it's reducing rapidly, combined with the percent of the service that's labor. It's a pretty small percentage of the total service is actually labor anymore in the storage area. It's become very automated and standardized over time. So you see a much thinner gap between with RPA versus without RPA for storage when it's bundled with the hardware. The labor reductions are significant. It's just not a large portion of the spend in the storage tower.
Great, thanks, David. We're gonna shift gears now a little bit after hearing about kind of the trends in the market that we're seeing around autonomics, and kind of take a step back and talk about overall trends in the market, and as it relates specifically to outsourcing pricing. One of the things that we've found in our business is that no matter what happens, no matter how good of a deal you think you have when you sign a deal, over time that deal gets out of market. And the reason for that is that regardless of what the price decline is that's occurring in the marketplace, when providers have to price a 4 or 5 or in some cases 7-year deal, they tend to be very conservative with their price reductions. So we've got some examples in the table on the right-hand side where you've got an annual market price decline. And we'll look at the SAN storage as an example. You know, the market price decline is at minimum 13 to 18%. And when you look at a contract and open up a contract, you'll typically see a price reduction in the spirit of 4 to 6%. If you're lucky on the outside, maybe 8 or 10%. So the price declines don't reflect the actual move in the marketplace for a variety of reasons, not the least of which is when you're rolling out technology, there is an investment and sort of a sunk cost, if you will, for that particular technology, especially as it relates to like SAN storage, for example. Once you buy or lease the frame, you have that for 3 or 4 years until you replace it with a different technology. So there's certainly some costs that cause that price to not be as aggressive as if you went out and bought it again. But as the market starts to move to much more buy the drink solutions, cloud solutions and the like, we expect that these prices are going to continue to decline. And so what happens is over time you end up in a situation where even if you had a good deal when you started, by the time you get out to 3 or 4 years out, your solution is actually out of market. And it's very common for us when we're doing benchmarking of transactions to find deals that are 3 or 4 years into the transaction to easily be 10 to 15% out of market. So that just kind of gives you a little bit of background. And then talking now on the next slide about the declines that we're actually seeing. So again, these are the forecasted declines that we would expect to see in the market if you were to go and buy a managed desktop, for example. Last year, you paid 8 to 12% more than you would if you were purchasing it today. So, and that continues over time. When you open up your contract and take a look at it, what you'll find is that the price decline represented in that contract is typically about half of the decline. So we're going to talk a little bit. I'm not going to go through all of these towers. You can certainly see these. We're going to walk through some specific towers for folks so that they can get a sense for the kinds of trends that we're actually seeing in the market. The first is, as I mentioned, is the desktop service, and just to kind of walk through what you're seeing on the page on the left-hand side, some of the trends that we're seeing. On the right-hand side is our map of the market that we see, and then the price declines that we saw in the last 12 months, and then our forecast of what we believe the price declines will look like in the upcoming 12 months. So in this case, you know, what we've seen in the desktop market is more of a disaggregation of service, and then automation of those, or alternate solutions being deployed. So in the case of email, for example, it used to be a desktop solution had a number of services baked into it, like email, LAN servers. Sometimes the service desk was baked in along with the desk side support. And today we've seen that become unbundled, and now each of those various services are now being targeted for automation and improvement. So as an example, more and more clients are buying off-the-shelf cloud-based email, which tends to be a lot more cost-effective than traditional email solutions. We're also seeing much more remote desktop management being done through automation and tools, reducing the desk side support necessary. And as part of that, a move of cost from desktop into the service desk because of the remote solution that's occurring. We are seeing implementations of virtual desktop, but those are actually fairly limited still, and there's not a lot of large-scale adoption. But we do see organizations, if not they're, you know, certainly the entire estate, at least portions of the estate where it makes sense, they are rolling out virtual desktop solutions. And then the last big trend that we're seeing is certainly bring your own device. We've seen that support increasing over time. Typically, it's just the client saying, we want, you know, the following users to be able to have BYOD devices supported, and the provider will typically take that on. It's unclear what pricing impacts there are. Certainly, service desk volumes typically will increase, and the provider is able to recover costs there. It's once you get to level 2 and level 3, that level of support is it's a little bit vague now how that's working. But more and more BYOD support is present in the solutions that we're seeing in the marketplace. And sort of on the flip side of that, as we talked about, service desk is taking on a lot more support. So you're seeing overall reduction in desktop support and a slight increase in service desk costs as a result of that. So the idea is that you would end up seeing you know, maybe a desk side visit, which might cost $50 or $60, being handled remotely on a service desk. And because that's being handled remotely, the service desk call might have been $10, is now becoming $11 or $12 because of the greater complexity of the support that's actually being done and the remote takeover and control. So much more of the support is being absorbed by the service desk as it tries to automate. And you can imagine, as we go back to talking about autonomics and automation at the service desk, as David pointed out in the slide that he presented, this is an area where providers are forecasting a significant decrease in price over 5 years. So if we were to go back to that slide that showed the decrease, the delivery cost of service desk, as they are forecasting it, is about half in year 5 than what it is today, which is a fairly significant price decline in a tower that has not seen much in the way of price declines. In fact, as we've shown here slight increases in the near term. But you can imagine the day, and many of us have experienced it already. You pick up the phone and you're talking to a computer before you get to a person, and initially, it's you got to press 1 to continue or what have you, and now even in some of the desks that you're seeing, you're starting to see more sophisticated use of technology, and you can imagine the day in the future, in the not too distant future, when the first person you talk to is actually not a person, but you're engaging in a conversation with an automated agent who is trying to solve your problem, and if they can't solve it, then you get back to a service desk agent. And you can imagine over time that as that system learns, sort of Siri on steroids, if you will, as that system learns and understands how to solve problems, fewer and fewer agents will be required at the back end. So this is going to be a very interesting market to follow over time, and we're going to see how that plays out. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to David to talk a little bit about the impacts in the server and storage markets.
All right. Yeah, Chris, and it's the important distinction to make between the year-over-year price, which was shown previously for Autonomics, that was based on the annual spending, where these are based on unit pricing. So like with service desk, the unit pricing is increasing a little, but the volume's decreasing a lot when you look at Autonomics. And what we've seen in server is in the last 12 months, about a 3 to 5% decline, and we're expecting a similar decline over the next 12 months on a unit price basis. And the trends within server, of course, are cloud services. There's a mix of traditional server support being bid in combination with cloud services for those applications that clients are able to transition over into the cloud. And then within traditional server, we're still seeing more and more images converted to virtual versus physical images. And so that's driving the price decreases over time for server. So let's go to the next slide. And then with storage and backup, again, the percentage declines we see are in the neighborhood of 10 to 14% for the last 12 months and continuing for the next 12 months around the same reductions. What we're seeing here is disaggregation of service with backup becoming separated from the production storage environment, giving clients the opportunity to multi-source their storage and have a different provider with backup as a service separate from the storage area. Although, again, with the unit price declines are occurring and it becomes cheaper and cheaper, people are purchasing, or customers are purchasing more and more storage. So the volume increases. We're seeing volume increase in usage of the storage and backup. So it's when you look at your budget, what you're spending annually may not be decreasing. It could be increasing for storage, but you're getting a lot more for your money. Next slide.
So thanks, David. So we have, as I mentioned earlier, quite a number of slides here that we could certainly go through. We've touched on a few of the critical areas. This is another example where we're seeing, from an IT standpoint, significant price reductions, and that is around telecom spending. We've got some example average price points here, and showing the declines, a 2-year decline from 2010 to 2012 in the 18 to 30% range, and then certainly in 2012 to 2013, a similar annual decline occurring. We'll make these slides certainly available for all the attendees, so you can actually see the data that's provided. We're not going to cover every single one of these, but just wanted to call out some of the key areas that we're seeing as price declining. Certainly, mainframe is another area where there are declines. This is a fairly stable environment, if you will, but we still see price declines. Again, getting back to that automation, and more of the solution, and this is going to be true in the future, it's all going to be about the software. And as software rules the world, you know, that's where there's leverage and scalability, because the software will replace the labor and continue to take cost out. And we're going to skip ahead here. We've got a couple of other price declines. Again, they're fairly small. One last area that I do think we want to cover. Someone had asked the question earlier about the BPO market, back off operations, and the impact on Autonomics. We did see, just from a historical standpoint, this market is it's still maturing. So there are significant price variances, given that it is while the market itself is mature, the pricing and the transparency in price is still evolving. So there's a fairly broad range of prices in the marketplace. But we did see, about 1.5 years ago, a devaluation of the rupee that caused providers' delivery costs to be significantly lower, about 10 or 15% lower. And as a result, we're starting to see that work its way into the market. We think that that's short-lived. Obviously, once you reach that next plateau, there's going to be a drive for organizations to look for more additional cost takeout. And as I mentioned earlier, we are seeing providers talking about this as a very ripe opportunity for autonomics and automation. Again, because these services, BPO services, are largely labor. And today it's been labor arbitrage, but in the future, we believe it's going to be labor takeout. So to the extent that they can implement software solutions that are automated leading up to autonomics, that will continue to drive the prices certainly lower. So with that, yes, we're going to provide the copy of the deck certainly to all the attendees. We'll make this available, and I don't know, Brady, if you had any other questions that have come in, but we might be able to take a few questions here at the last minute, as we have just a few more minutes of time here.
Yeah, Chris, looks like we've got one came in. Let's see. How would you assess the provider landscape in terms of adoption? Are there a few aggressive adopters driving the market, or are you seeing broad adoption?
Good question, and I'm assuming that's related to Autonomics. I would say, as I mentioned earlier, I would say that the market leaders are out there either actively selling or have sold solutions for Autonomics. And you know, so there's sort of a third of the market is doing that. There's a middle third that talks about it, but we haven't actually seen solutions in the market from them. And then the last third is sort of, you know, understanding that there's something there, but they're still living in the old world, and knowing that it's coming, but not sure, you know, what to do about it. So So I think, just like any new adoption of a technology or capability, there are a few market leaders. So for example, IBM and Watson. IBM has come out strong with Autonomics. You've also got companies that are adopting technologies like IPsoft is a solution that providers or clients could actually integrate and use. And also Blue Prism is another one that does automation. So I think you're starting to see, sort of market leaders, doing these proof of concepts, and I think that will continue over time.
Great, thanks, Chris. We got another question. When it comes to autonomics in the financial services industry, are you seeing any specific trends and/or other variables specific to FSI?
Yeah, that's a great question, and actually we're not yet seeing specific transactions. We're seeing providers talk about it. Unlike in the IT space, there are deals that are actively being either negotiated or have been signed and are working towards solutions. On the F&A side, it's either hidden, which in some cases is going to help with continue allowing the market to be opaque, or they're just not talking about it at all, or they're not. We don't see it in the solution necessarily, but certainly talking about it, as this is everybody wants to do this. It's like moving to transaction pricing. That's going to be the sort of the holy grail, if you will. Everybody's talking about that, but right now that's largely how many FTs do you have, what's the total cost, divide that by the number of transactions, that's your transaction price, which is not necessarily comparable to the next F&A deal that comes in the door because the configuration of that service isn't very well defined. So in F&A, I think it's much more behind the scenes, a provider bringing a solution, rather than it kind of being sold initially in a deal as an autonomic solution to drive solutions. This might be something we could do a follow-up discussion on for the folks that have asked the question. We can get one of our experts to talk further, certainly about what they've seen in the market.
Great, thanks, Chris. We're at the top of the hour. Let's go ahead and close it up. Again, we'll have I'll be sending out an email with a link to a recording of the session, as well as the deck, so that you guys can see it after the presentation. Hope everybody has a good afternoon, and thank you very much for attending.